Genesis 27, verses 41 through, I think I had said before 45, but I really feel like we need to go to 46, and we'll just finish the chapter. And remember, this is part of a section that goes all the way down to chapter 28 and verse 9, so we're not done with this section yet, but we will finish the chapter, so to speak. So I would not have believed that I was going to plan to spend, by the time we're done, 8 or 9 messages on this whole section. That's a lot. We've had 6. This is number 7, I believe, and there'll be 1 or 2 more before we're done. I do trust that the various details of the story, though, are becoming clearer as we work our way through the details of the passage, and that the story's, I hope, begun to feel as weighty to you as Moses obviously believed it to be when he penned these words for the nation of Israel. He spent a lot of time on it. He only gave us a few stories about these men and their lives. These are the things he focused on. Every detail is a detail that he chose to put in, and others are details he chose to leave out. And these were the stories that were to shape the conscience of Israel as they were, developed into a nation and a people, and settled in the land. They were to think about their history in terms of these stories. And we want to glean from them all that we can. The sermon today essentially just covers these 6 verses, 41 through 46. And Rebekah is the only one who actually speaks in this section. We're given a report that someone else was saying something to themselves, but this is the only one who were actually told specifically what she said. And that's an unusual thing in this story. So with that said, let's read these verses, and then we will pray and seek the Lord's help in uncovering what's here. Verse 41. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother, in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me?" Okay, let's pray. Father in heaven, admittedly these verses are foreign to us. They're a far-off time and a far-off place, and just seem pretty disconnected. We're thankful for the wider story, to put them in context. We're thankful for the things you go on to do in the lives of the people that are discussed here, and so that we know there's far more to the story, and we're able to think about these things in a right context. And yet we don't ever really understand the whole unless we understand these pieces rightly. And so we're asking today that you help us to get out of these verses the truths that are there, to not miss the details and the important points of the story, so that we can think in the right way about the lives of these people, so that when you declare things to us about them and we see your dealings with them, we can know how to put ourselves in a similar situation. How do these stories relate to us? We can only know that if we know the stories well and rightly. And so we're placing ourselves now at your feet and asking you to take this word, once spoken, once recorded, and passed on many times for us, and to impart it to us, to teach us with these words. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Well, let's just dive in. Verse 41. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. I said earlier that Rebekah is the only one who speaks in these verses, and that's true. Notice in this verse we read about something Esau was saying, again, to himself. I will say, though, evidently it was something he was also speaking about with close friends, or perhaps with trusted servants, for perhaps even his wives, anyone with whom he might often share his private thoughts. The idea is he didn't just kind of have this thought one time. He said to himself, he began to ruminate, to consider and ponder and hatch something of a plan as to what he was going to do. It might have been the kind of thing that, sometimes you say something offhanded, and then after you hear it, you think, yeah, that's just what I'm going to do. This kind of thing. Whatever happens, he begins to consider this more and more, and this becomes a plan and a resolute direction that he intends to take. And so this is what it is. And those kinds of things have a way of coming out in passing. They have, people have a way of disclosing their intentions, and so however it was known to others, it became known. But what Esau was doing is the text says, said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother Jacob. What we have here is I would say, a summary of his response once he left the tent of his father with this anti-blessing or this non-blessing that he got, rather than the blessing he was anticipating receiving. This is a summary of his response. There are several things that we should take careful consideration of as we read it. First, notice that he hates Jacob. His first response, when he leaves his father's tent, the first thing that kind of settles in as a condition of his heart is absolute hatred for his brother Jacob. I need to make a correction to my message last week. It wasn't a main point, but something I said to kind of further demonstrate a point that was already made in the text about how personally Esau had taken this whole situation and how he responded to Jacob stealing his blessing. I mentioned then that the word used for bitter in verse 34, when it says, as soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry. I said that word bitter was actually a word also used later in Genesis, that the brothers of Joseph, when they met him again, were very fearful that Joseph would be bitter toward them. That was that same word. And I don't know why I said it that way, because the word for bitter is a very well-known word, mara in the Hebrew, and that's not this word. The word is used in this verse, and I just misremembered or something, I don't know. But the word that's used is this verse when it says he hated Jacob. And the word is literally, it's like he held this grudge. He hated him with cause, whether it was an imagined cause or not. He had cause for it, and he was harboring this grudge. And that is specifically the thing that Joseph's brothers were concerned about. The word is used in that text and in this passage, but it was just a different word. I don't know why I said it was the word bitter. Like I said, just misremembered. But the point remains the same, but it is the word that's used here. Later on, again, Joseph's brothers fear that now he has power over them. It's going to go bad for them, and he's going to act on this hatred that he may have in his heart. For leaving him for dead and then for selling him into slavery. Now, so Esau hates Jacob. This is the word. That is, he has in his heart strong feelings of anger and wrath toward his brother. You might even say he resents his brother's existence. And his dislike toward his brother has reached levels of hatred. So that not only does he not rejoice in doing good to Jacob, as you'd like brothers to do with one another, but he actually delights when anything goes bad for Jacob. He actually wants to, not only does he delight when he hears about things going bad for Jacob, he wants to actively work to bring about bad things on Jacob's head. So much so, I mean, you might hate someone but not be willing to murder them. But he's planning his murder. This is hatred in the extreme. It is sad indeed when a brother hates a brother. Now, that's the first thing to notice. He hates his brother. His first response, to hate his brother. The second thing to notice in the verse is the reason why Esau hates Jacob. It is because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. It says, because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. Now, different people take this different ways. I personally take this to mean that Esau is not hating Jacob because of the blessing Jacob got, but because of the blessing Esau received. He's hating Jacob because of the blessing with which his father, that is Esau's father, had blessed him, that is Esau. He hates Jacob because of the blessing that Isaac gave to Esau. That's why Esau hates his brother Jacob. Which doesn't make sense except we know the rest of the story, and that Jacob is the reason why Esau got blessed with the blessing he got. Right? I mean, it was bad enough that Jacob took the blessing, but when he was pleading with his father Isaac, he wasn't pleading, take it back, don't give that to him. He wasn't mad that Jacob got what he got. He's angry that there's nothing left for him, and that the only blessing he receives it's an anti-blessing, it's a non-blessing, it's a curse. This is infuriating. How can that be my blessing? This is why he's so angry, why he hates him. Jacob had stolen the blessing intended for Esau, and the only thing that seems to have made Esau so bitter is not that his blessing was stolen, but there was this other blessing left that was no blessing at all. Nothing for him. And so that the blessing he received from his father was a curse. Again, it's not that Jacob had something good, but there was no good thing left for Esau. So that's the second thing to notice. The third thing to notice is that Esau, the usually impulsive person, so desires to take vengeance upon his brother that he decides to plan and wait for the right time rather than act immediately. And this is just, it's crazy because everything we know about this guy is he's just so impulsive. He comes in from the field, I got to have that food, sell me your birthright. Okay. What good is that going to do to me? I mean, if I told you I had $500,000 in stock at Apple, right, or you had that, and I said, hey, I'll trade you a Happy Meal for that, and you did it, that's pretty impulsive. Like none of us would say we've got someone making wise decisions and planning for the future. This is an utter fool. And this is what Esau is. This is what he does. He's so impulsive. And if anyone that's that impulsive sets out and they begin to plan something that may happen soon, may happen in the distant future, and they're just saying, I'm just going to wait, bide my time. You know this thing means everything to them. This means more to him than his birthright. Right? Getting revenge on his brother, putting his brother in the grave is more important to him than anything has ever been in his entire life. That's incredible. This is Esau. This was a deeply rooted and a deeply felt hatred for his brother. He says to himself, what does he say? The days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother Jacob. Everyone, including Isaac even, thought Isaac might die soon. That's why he did this whole thing, right? He's at the end of his time. He's thinking, I need to do what I can now before I can't do it. And I'm going to pronounce these blessings. Everyone thinks that he's going to die soon. But in fact, he lives another 40 years. You think about those people that in Acts that, they said, we're not going to eat again until Paul is dead. And then it's like, I'm pretty sure they ate. It wasn't, they were just so enraged. They were going to kill him. Make this vow to one another. Swear an oath. Make a pact, a bond. None of us will eat until this happens. And then either one by one they starve to death, or they all just give up and say, oh, it was stupid. Right? But so here, Esau's thinking, Dad's going to be dead soon, and I can wait. I don't know how long I wait, but I can wait. I'm going to wait until the time. And then Dad lives another 40 years. Who thought? That's the providence of God looking after Jacob, for sure. But he lives another 40 years. But again, at this present time, Esau decides to wait. Why wait, though, until this time? I mean, if you're why not just go kill him? You're so angry. Why wait? There really should be the immediate question we ask. Why wait until that time? He doesn't wait for anything else. Why is he so concerned to wait? And that's my big question as I come to this text. Why wait? I think there can be several reasons. I don't think any of them are found directly in the text. I think all of them you kind of have to read between the lines. I want to give you several of these possibilities and say this. They are not all mutually exclusive. Some of them, like this one can't be true and this one. But it may be a combination of these. It may be something different. What I want to do as I attempt to offer you these explanations is to portray how high these emotions would be riding in this situation. And for you to, I think you'll agree as I mention these things that these are all very possible. And all of them are really bad, but they're all very possible. So the first thing is, it may be that he's afraid that if he were to kill Jacob right now, Isaac might further curse him, and things would be worse off than before. Or perhaps he'd be avenged. He would be killed, perhaps. Maybe his father would not allow this. Maybe the other servant, his dad was gone, the other servants, one brother kills the other, kind of like, well, he kind of had it coming. But if Isaac is still there as the head of the family, he just wouldn't stand for it. Maybe he would be cursed, maybe he'd be banished, maybe he'd be executed. He just doesn't want to deal with his father's wrath. Even though he's the favorite, that's different than Dad saying, go ahead and kill the other one. There's a big difference here. That could be one thing. He's fearful of his father's retribution. Another possibility, it may be that he still holds his father in enough honor that he wouldn't want to kill Jacob now because Isaac is so close to death. Why not let him die in peace? Things have gone badly enough. Just let Dad pass away, and then this thing will happen, right? I've known. I won't say anything now about. I'm being recorded, so there's information I would divulge about people that it wouldn't be good. So it'd be fine for this group, but not for anyone who might listen. So we'll leave it at that. Now, that's the second possibility, that he holds his father in enough honor that he wants to let him die in peace. Third possibility, it may be that he wants revenge not just for himself, but also for what he imagines to be the dishonor that Jacob brought to their father Isaac by deceiving Isaac about the blessing. I think this gets a little bit complicated. Think about this. He might view Jacob and think, not only did you cheat me, but look how you dishonored our father, right? And he knows that according to custom and tradition, when Dad dies, I don't know what Jacob's going to do right now, but he's going to be there. And what a high-handed insult for him to come and then be here at the burial of Dad. After all that he did, I can't wait. When he shows up, he's a dead man. That's when I'm going to do it. That would be like poetic justice. The height of vengeance would be to do it there, right next to where Dad's dead. He comes in all high-handed, this deceiver, to come in and think that he can, be okay with the family and honor our father after what he just pulled. That could be. It would seem like Esau, like this final insult to their father Jacob, to show up in a situation like that after he just lied and deceived his father in such an important family event as passing on the blessings. In other words, he plans to kill Jacob for personal revenge, But he waits until that scoundrel shows up at Dad's burial, and that makes him all the more deserving of vengeance. There, in such a time as that, Esau might imagine himself to be avenging both his wrongs and the wrongs done to his father's house. And so that could be. That sounds to me like a little bit too much planning for Esau, though. It does. But it's very possible. Another possibility may be that he's so angry with his father that while he's not bold enough to attack his father, he's plotting to take his revenge against his brother at a time that will also spoil the events of his father's burial. Right? I mean, how tragic would that be? When your children are gathered together to honor your life and to bury you, there's murder that takes place. That's ridiculous. It's such a shameful thing. So you could imagine how plotting this, you could see it two different ways. Either he's seeing it maybe as avenging his father's, dishonor by Jacob, or he could see it as a way of maybe trying to dishonor his father and get back at him. This is what I mean, but there's very many possibilities here. But regardless, you see how a man might be planning this and taking into account all the different parties involved, and he could say, well, at the time when Dad dies and we go to bury him, that's when the time will be to do this. That's when the best time will be. It could be all about self-interest and avoiding a curse and avoiding retribution. It could be about poetic justice. It could be, just loving Dad and wanting him to die in peace. It could be wanting to avenge his dishonor. It could be wanting to dishonor him himself. There's a lot of possibilities. They can't all be true, but a couple of them could be true at the same time. We don't know which of these is right or if any of them is correct. But again, I hope that just by laying them out there, you begin to realize there's a lot that's going on here in Esau's mind, regardless, for him to plan this and think about it in this way. So there are powerful emotions at work in Esau, and these have led him to make the determination that he's going to kill his brother Jacob when the days of mourning for his father are approaching. Now, next verse 42. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. We'll stop there. There's that. Anyone have anything else in that verse at the beginning of it other than but? Good. Yes. Okay, that's not bad. It is just a connecting verse or a word. It's not like it has to be taken as a contrast. I think it's far better if we understand it as a contrast, and that might even be what Stan's translation that he's reading from there is saying with this in verse 42, now the words of Esau. But the idea is this: Esau has this plan, but there's another plan at work. Something else has happened, right? Just like earlier, Isaac goes to Esau and tells him they hatched this plan. But Rebekah messes it up when she hears something. She overhears. This time, Esau's got a plan, but Rebekah got word of it. And she's going to foil it, yet another plan of the family. She's good at this. She's crafty. She's scheming. I would just say, the Bible never tells us directly, but surely there's no doubt where Jacob gets it. Right? I mean, she's the one who's always concocting these plans that work. Right? She doesn't know all the results of what they're going to be, but she's crafty. Twice in one chapter we read her say to her son Jacob, obey my voice. Listen to what I'm saying and obey my voice. And both times she gets what she wanted. Now, so here's Esau planning this, but it's not going to work because the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So it contrasts these facts with what we read before. But something else has happened. Other things are at play which will prevent Esau once again from what he wants, and which will ensure that the words of God come to pass despite Esau's evil plotting of revenge. So a report was made to Rebekah. We don't know by whom. It doesn't tell us. Wouldn't you like to know? Who's told? That would be an interesting point to know. We don't know why they told her. It could have been by a friendly servant. You can imagine that. You know, this servant says, I always liked Jacob. You know, I don't want this to happen. And he goes and he tells her, he's not able to get word to Jacob maybe, but he's able to say something to Rebekah to get word out. Or it could have been a hostile daughter-in-law. Just you wait. You think, you love Jacob so much, I'm telling you right now, my husband's going to kill him. Time's coming, I'm telling you right now. People are stupid like that, right? They say things that's like, what are you doing? You can imagine Esau, don't say it. Now I can't do it. Right? It's hard to be mad at someone for canceling your plans for murder. But you could imagine. So who knows what the situation is? Could be a lot of different things. Again, we're not told. Could be anybody in between there. But somehow a report is made to Rebekah. And because the report was made, we can know that Esau was not only speaking to himself, right? He wasn't just thinking in his own head. Very likely this was not merely something that was reported to her that very night. I think this is the kind of thing that settles in. Think of this. Esau, the last time we saw him, was totally distraught. He lifted up his voice and wept. And then he's given this anti-blessing, right? And he's just overcome with grief. And then now, Esau begins to lift his spirits over the next several days, perhaps several weeks. I would say probably not months, as Rebekah later seems to think that his feelings will pass with some time. You know, if you found out 6 months after the fact that he's plotting murder, I don't think you'd think, oh, this is probably going to pass. Like, it's not going to pass. He's determined. But if it's a few days later, thinking, well, all right, Jacob, just go. Get out of here. You don't know what he's going to do. And when it's safe, when he feels different, I'll send word and he can bring you back. So it's not too long of time that passes, but it's likely not that same night that he's been saying these things and word has gotten to Rebekah, the same night that the blessing was pronounced. Probably a different time. So what does she do? She sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and says to him, behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. So now that Rebekah has the report about Esau's plan, her response is to call Jacob, her younger son, the son whom she loved, and to tell him the news and to convey the danger that he's in to him so he understands. She has a plan, once again, before he even gets there. Get it all worked out. Just do what I say. Right? To help her favorite son. Though this is a plan, we'll say this. One could imagine any mother would plot to save a child of their own. Right? I mean, even if she loved Esau more than Jacob, which was not true, but let's say Esau was her favorite, you could still imagine she would try to preserve Jacob alive. It's not just that Jacob's the favorite, so she wants him to live. She just doesn't want her son to be murdered, particularly by her other son. There is one helpful detail, I think, that's added at this point. When she says, she gives the report to Jacob. But in her reporting, there's a helpful detail, I think. She says that Esau is comforting himself with this plan. Comforting himself with this plan. And that's an interesting way to say it. It's a bit shocking. In other words, think of this. Esau was in bitter distress and anguish, but as a few days go by, he seems to be getting over it. He seems to be in a better mood around camp. And you think, oh, he's getting better. And he kind of asks, so how's he doing? He asks people that are close to him, seems like he's taking it better than I thought he would. Oh, kind of. What do you mean? Right? Well, the only thing that seems to be lifting his spirits at all is the idea of dancing on his brother's grave. That's really what he's just delighted that he's like continually, he's giggling in there in his tent with the plans that he's making. And he's sharpening that sword or that spear every night. He's got he made a little image of his brother and he throws at it, or like, you don't know. This is that he's comforting himself. What's lifting his spirits is the fact that it's okay. It's all right. And such people like this. You've heard people talk like this. It's all right. They'll get theirs. It's coming. I'm all right for now. Right? Some bad thing happens to somebody else does. And the person who was wronged doesn't just get over it. You'll hear them saying things like, that's okay. Their day's coming. We'll see. I don't need to get you right now. This is the kind of thing. So he's all right with it. He was totally overcome. And then the thought comes in his mind, wait, I could kill him later, and I got just the time to do it. And it begins to just not be so burdened by what he lost, because he's content to get him. My boys are laughing over here because they've got this little prank war going on, and they're always saying that same thing to each other. I didn't think of it until now as you guys were laughing. They're always saying, it's okay. I'll get you. Right? I've got a plan. But they're not planning murder. I don't think. Right? No. So this is what we mean. It's tragic. So it's really interesting just to think of it this way. He's comforting himself. And then it says, comforting himself about you. He's comforting himself about you. He wasn't just, Esau was distraught about what happened to him, but he was also enraged over his brother. And what's kind of calming him down? It's this, that's okay, I've got a plan. So I can calm down, I can act peaceably, I cannot run at you when I see you, I cannot scream at you or yell about you when someone mentions your name. I can just chill out, because inside I've got all that energy is brewing this plan, and we're ready. Like it's all worked out. This is the idea. I'm covering himself about you by planning to kill you. I mean, I hope if anyone's ever comforting themselves about me, it's not by planning to kill me, right? This is the way it was. Passers-by would certainly have wondered, what is it? Why is he kind of feeling, he's not so upset anymore. He's feeling better. How was it that he's handling all of this so much better than other things? Well, the answer is very sinister. He was comforting himself and lifting his spirits by his continual plotting to kill his brother Jacob down the line. It's a shocking thing to take comfort in, personal vengeance. But like I said, it's commonly done. You hear people say again, well, they'll get there soon enough. When people say that, you ought to be thinking about Esau plotting to kill Jacob. It's diabolical. Most people say this kind of thing not in a sense of justice for crimes committed. Like some guy robbed a bank, says, well, they'll catch him. That's different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone saying, I plan to enact vengeance down the road, and I can bide my time because it's going to be good. Right? This is what we mean. This is awful. Like, you can't excuse that kind of thing. It's just the kind of thing that Esau is doing here. Seeking vengeance for personal grudges held between people, personal wrongs. Now the next verse 43. She reports this to him and then says, now therefore, because this is true, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away. Rebekah responds not merely by warning Jacob, but with urgent instructions as well, right? Doesn't just warn him, hey, he's plotting to kill you, so I'm just thought I'd let you know. She doesn't leave it to Jacob to figure out how to avoid this. She has a plan of her own, and she's pleading with him, begging him, you might even say commanding him, to obey and follow the plan she's put in place. Just do what I'm telling you to do. Let's keep you safe. You could imagine, I don't know, what would the typical guy do if you said somebody's planning to come get you? Most of those guys would say, well, come on, let's go. I'm going to go after him. She didn't want that. She doesn't want that. It'd be weird, two 77-year-old men duking it out. I don't know how that's going to go. Right? But this is the situation. And she just is pleading with Jacob to follow what she's put in place. Strong, obey my voice, she says. Rare words for a mother to say to a grown man of such an age. Obey me. Well, she's got a brother named Laban. We've already met in an earlier chapter, right? She wants Jacob to flee to her brother in Haran several weeks of travel away and stay there for a while until Esau cools off. Just let it pass. Everything about Esau has until now demonstrated that he's very impulsive. If he's angry enough to kill right now, she's probably thinking, well, it's probably not going to last too long. He'll cool off, right? I mean, nothing in his life ever did last very long, right? He seemed to be pushed about from one impulse to another for his entire life. But even though he's now planning a murder that won't take place until his father is dead, there are two reasons for immediate action. Because you might say, if you hear that he's planning to murder when the days of mourning for their father arrives, so then Jacob is safe until then. Right? Wouldn't you think that? The plan is after Dad dies, so as long as Dad's alive, he's safe. He can just stick around, he's untouchable, because Esau has this plan. There's a problem with that. Two reasons Jacob still needs to get out of there. The first reason is, even though Esau is now planning a murder that won't take place until after the father is dead, Isaac might die soon. That's the first reason. He might die tonight. He might die tomorrow. He might die next week. Don't just think you can just stick around and indefinitely. He may die soon. But the second reason I think is poses a more immediate danger, and that is this. Since Esau is that angry, that he's willing even to plan this thing, the mere presence of Jacob could, in fact, be enough to set him off and make him decide against his plan to wait and go ahead and take his vengeance now. Because he is so impulsive. I mean, perhaps he does cool off enough and they're even able to eat from the same cooking pot again. Right? Maybe they're even able to do that. But then Jacob makes some gesture that reminds Esau of some wrong done in the past, and it's too much. Like that kind of thing could happen. And so he's got to get out of there. He was, after all, very, very impulsive. And so you don't risk it by sticking around. You just go. Rebekah wasn't saying, leave until your father dies and then wait and stay gone until after the period of mourning and then come. When Rebekah heard, think of this, when Rebekah hears that Esau is planning, after my father dies and the days of mourning come, then I'm going to kill my brother, she doesn't think he's going to be able to stick to that plan. She doesn't say, leave until your father dies. She says, just wait till he cools off. Right? Because we all know Esau, he's all worked up about something, he goes at it all the way, and then he just doesn't ever touch it again. This is the way it is. That's his life. And so, just stay gone until he cools off. She's not worried about him staying gone until Isaac dies. She's not worried about Esau actually carrying through with this plan. She doesn't think he's capable of it. She fears he's not going to be able, if he's that angry, he's planning it, well then he's not even going to be able to wait. When Jacob and he come together, it's going to be a problem. Huge problem, huge risk. Just get out of here. He'll cool off and then there'll be no risk anymore. So this is her opinion of the whole thing, and this is her plan. She says to do that, verse 45, until we'll say this, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? Now, in the ESV, verse 44 ends with this M dash. It says, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away. Right? Until your brother's anger turns away from you and he forgets what you have done to him. And that's not bad, but that represents a difficulty in the original language that translators are trying to figure out. And I'm not sure what the NASB does there, but I would just suggest we do something a little bit different. And that is to give a full stop period at the end of verse 44. And stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away. Period. And then instead of reading until, read the word when. And I think then this next sentence, this next whole line runs together good, the next verse. When your brother's anger turns away from you and he forgets what you have done to him, then I will send and bring you from there. Right? So just punctuating it. We're talking about a grammatical issue, but it's there and it could, I'm not sure what the different translations do with it. But the idea is go there until your brother's fury turns away, right? Stay out there. And then when his anger has turned away from you and he forgets what you've done to him, that is the time when I will send and bring you from there back to here. Now, notice this. Rebekah doesn't think it's going to be too long. Verse 44, and stay with him a while. Stay there a while. It's not, I don't know how long is a while. It's not 20 years, which is what it ends up being. I mean, who does that? You know, I'm going to go there for a while. And then 20 years later you come back, you'd say, we need to talk about your definition of a while. Right? And this is what happens. Like she says, she's thinking it's going to be a short period of time. Go over there for a while, then come back. Won't be too long, maybe a few months. Surely not a year. I don't know, it's hard to say. But she will send word and bring him back when it's safe, when he's totally safe. She doesn't think it's going to be too long. As it turns out, again, it's 20 years, and you can just consider that. I'll give you evidence for that if you want to look at Genesis chapter 31, beginning in verse 38. Genesis 31:38. This is Jacob's description of how long he was gone. He's complaining to Laban, her brother, where she sent him. And he says, this is how it turned out for him. Verse 38, these 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. Right? So he was there. He says it twice. 20 years I've been here. 14 years for these 2 women and 6 years for the flock. So he was out there for 20 years. Let's consider this about Rebekah. We never read anything about Rebekah's death. She was already at this stage well over 100 years old. Let me just prove that mathematically to you. We know from backdating the others that the boys are 77 at this time. The boys, right? The sons, how about that? Her descendants are 77 years old at this time. So she's at least 77, right? She was married for 20 years before she had children. So that's at least 97. So if she got married at birth, she'd be 97 years old, right? So she's well over 100. I mean, let's say she's possibly as young as 12 or 13 when she got married, maybe as old as 30, somewhere in there. You know, so she's, well, I mean, you know, 100 and what? I mean, at least 109, at least. That's if she got married at 12. I think all of us hope she's older than 109, right? I do. But that seems, I mean, so she's old. Tack on another 20 years to that. It's likely, the text doesn't tell us, it's likely she's dead when he comes back. This is their last meeting, probably, right? When Jacob does return, there is, after a long period of time even, a mention of his reunion with his father Isaac. No, nothing about Rebekah, just his reunion with Isaac is mentioned. And then also is mentioned about him burying the woman who had taken care of his mother in her old age. So his mother in her old age, even older than this, she's got some woman who takes care of her because she's so old, and mom dies. Later, Jacob buries that woman and honors her in her death. The fact that you're mentioning burying the nurse and not burying the mother, to me just speaks that he wasn't around when she died. I can't say that definitively. It's an argument from silence, but it seems like this is their last meeting. You can imagine Rebekah never would have believed that this is the way this would have happened. This was their last meeting? Go, I'll call you when it's safe. And she never sends word. Or she dies first. It's amazing. I mean, remember when Jacob comes back, he's not thinking it's safe to come back. He knows, Mom never called me. She never sent for me, so Esau is still upset and I need to be afraid. He's never heard any different. He was staying out there until Mom sent him word, and she never did. That's the problem with all these secret plans. When it's just you and another person and something happens to them, you don't get word. You never know. Not good. So, when Rebekah says, though, she does say this. What else does she say? Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? Here again, she could have two things in mind. I know I'm kind of giving you lots of interpretive options throughout this whole message, but I don't know what else to do. I can't just pound the pulpit and tell you that it has to be a certain way when it could be multiple ways. And so I want to give you both the options. Bereft, certainly, we know this, means to be deprived of something, right? It's an old-fashioned word for our word bereavement, right? Or to be bereaved, like when people lose a loved one. We talk about a bereavement period, where they're just, for this period of time, we understand they're kind of mourning, right? She says, why should I be bereft of you both in one day? She says she wants to send him away and do that until your brother forgets what you've done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? Who's you both? Who are the two people she's talking about? She could mean, I think regardless, she doesn't mean one chronological day, 24-hour period. I think she might mean that when Isaac dies, if Jacob's still there, then basically at the same time, in the one act of Isaac dying, she has effectively lost her son as well, and she's lost them both. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? Like one action is going to cause that. Or she might mean Jacob and Esau. If Esau were to kill Jacob, it's very likely that vengeance be taken out on him, and maybe he'd be executed by those in the family, in which case she'd lose them both in one day. I think it's less likely that Esau would be executed in this instance because they're out kind of on the edge of things, away from the towns. They don't have family connections. I mean, their only family right at this point is Esau's wives and his kids. So there's nobody else that's going to enact vengeance against Esau. So I think it's likely that when she says be bereft of you both, she means the plan is when Isaac dies, Jacob dies. And I want to get you out of here. Why should I lose you both in the same day? That's what I think. I think it's more consistent with the text. But it's possible it could be either. A lot of commentators take it as both sons, and I'm not convinced, but I don't know that I could persuade us all that can't be the possible answer. So, also notice one other thing, and this is remarkable. I've pointed it out before in passing. Rebekah does not take responsibility for the consequences of her actions, as she should, or for Jacob's deceit as she promised she would. I mean, now's the time to pay up. You said that, Jacob said, well, what if we get found out and I get cursed? Let it all come on me. I'll take the consequences. I'll bear the brunt of these actions. If it goes badly, just point the finger to me. I'll step up and take the consequences. And now she's saying, run for your life. It's like, why aren't you running? Why aren't you saying, no, it was me? Her great plan is, go, quick. Like, what in the world? That's your plan? Now, admittedly, she doesn't think it's exile. She thinks it's, you'll be gone for a few months and come back. Right? But a person of honor would have said, gone right up to Esau, opened the tent door and said, I know you're angry with your brother, but it was my idea. He was even unwilling to do it, but I persuaded him and told him that I would bear the consequences. So whatever it is you intend to do to him, you need to come and deal with me. You just need to. That's what she should have done. I mean, she shouldn't have done concocted the whole scheme. But at this point, that would have been the right thing, and she doesn't do it. Beware of casting your lots in with thieves and crooks and cheats, right? I mean, here, let's you and I plot together to deceive this person. Oh, you can trust me. Like, what do you mean? You can't trust him. Like, this is his own mother. Right? And you say, well, Mom wouldn't lie to me. She's lying to your brother. She's lying to your dad. Why wouldn't she lie to you? She'll keep her word. She's not keeping her word to them. She went in her tent and got the best garments of your brother and put them on you to deceive your blind father. She's not a woman of honor. It's tragic. Rebekah's story started out so good. I'll go with you. Like God seems to be with you. My family's a little bit unsure, but I'll go. God is obviously in this, and I'm going to follow, and I'm going to go marry this man, sight unseen, because it's very apparent that a living God, the living God, is with this man. And she goes. And to get to the end of her time, and this is what she's doing. So she failed Jacob in that sense too. She didn't step up to the plate and bear the responsibility she promised she would bear. But then this next verse I think is very important to tie in, and you see Rebekah's scheming. Here you see just how thorough it was. Then Rebekah said to Isaac, so she tells this to Jacob, you got to go for this period of time, and this is what needs to happen. Then she goes to Isaac and says, she doesn't tell him Esau's planning to kill Jacob. She doesn't tell him that specifically. Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? So she tells him like she's just in distress. Her life has been miserable for the last 37 years because of Esau and these Hittite women. And Jacob knows it, and Isaac knows it, because his life's been miserable as well. The text told us that earlier. Their life was bitter. Bitterness of spirit, like down deep. Life was awful because of the women that Esau married and their customs, their religious practices, their attitude at camp, the way they were. Things were terrible. And now, after 37 years, it's got to happen tonight. We've got to send him out. It's urgent. Send him away. He's got to go get a bride. Like, why? This is kind of ridiculous. If she's so concerned, she says, "What if this happens? What good will my life be to me?" Like, you're telling me there's something that you're so concerned about, you're afraid if it happens, you might as well kill yourself because there's no point in living. You've been concerned about this all this time, and you waited 37 years before you decided to act. Think of this. Abraham, when his son Isaac was 40 years old, he took his servant and said, "Go find a bride." Esau gets to be 40 years old, and mom and dad aren't concerned in the least to find wives for their boys. And he goes out and gets his own. 2 of them, in fact. And they completely disapprove, and life is terrible because of it. And Isaac and Rebekah never once thought to say, let's go send our boy out there back to Haran and get a bride. They weren't concerned about it in the least, it doesn't seem. As bitter as life had been, they didn't have the forethought. They didn't, for all her scheming and planning, this wasn't important enough for her until now. Until it could be used as a cover with Isaac as a reason to get Jacob out of the camp. It's terrible. I have no doubt that she felt this way to some extent. I have no doubt she really didn't want Jacob to marry one of these Hittite women. And evidently Jacob didn't have much desire to marry one. He's 77 years old, never been married. It's not that he didn't want to get married, because he gets married. But not to these Hittite women. Evidently it wasn't much of a risk that Jacob was going to do that. He's 77 years old and he's not fallen prey to it yet. But she comes to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? Now, I don't want to get into what comes in the next chapter. That'll be for next time. But I will say this, because I think it's relevant now. I don't think Isaac is totally duped by this. Here's what I mean. When Abraham sent his servant on behalf of his son Isaac to go find a bride, how did the servant pack? You remember? Did the servant just come with a wooden staff and just show up? What did he have with him? Riches. He had all kinds of stuff, right? When Jacob flees, he's got nothing. So I think, like, part of it is there wasn't really time to pack, right? You don't know what Esau's going to do. But also, he doesn't say, okay, go find a bride. Now, as part of sending you off for that purpose, I must bring you all these things. He just doesn't do that. Just go. So I think he also knows, like, there's some danger here. Like, yeah, it's probably a good time to send him away. Let's do that. That'll take a little while. That's a good reason for him to be gone. Maybe Esau won't know what's up, that we're on to him. Maybe Esau won't pursue him out there. Maybe that is a good idea. That's what I think is happening here. She gives Isaac a reason, and Isaac agrees that is a good reason, that is something that needs to happen. But he also kind of reads between the lines and knows that, yeah, it's probably a pretty opportunistic time to go ahead and send him. Let's do that. But there's not time. If they're gonna save his life, there's not time to just pack all this stuff up and go. They need to get on their way quickly, and so he doesn't take all these things with him. Now, what do we say about all this? Well, not me, right? Well, that's one thing we want to say. Not me, not my family, not now, not ever, I hope. But I think there's just one particular lesson I want to draw from all this. I mean, when I look at this story, I hope you have the same feeling, at least initially. It's so deflating. I mean, this is their life. It's so ridiculous. If you meet someone, and some of us know people like this. We're close friends with some people where this is their life, this is their family. You go in and you talk to them about something, and they start talking about their brother or their sister or something happened in the past, and you think, what did they do? Are you kidding me? How is that possible? I mean, imagine Esau. You meet Esau and you start telling him, so you got any brothers or sisters? Well, I have one brother, or I had a brother. I won't have him too much longer. What do you mean? Well, I'm going to kill him if I see him. Why? Why would you do that? Well, let me tell you. And he starts telling you about his brother Jacob. And you halfway, if he just told you his side of things, you'd halfway be thinking, good, kill him. He deserves it, right? Or you're Isaac, you're friends with Isaac, and he starts telling you about his boy Esau, and how there's just no disregard. Like, God has done so much for us, brought us into this land, he's been so faithful to us, and this boy, he doesn't care at all. Look what he's done. And he married these women, and look what they're like, and he tolerates this, and he just lets them treat his mother this way, and it's awful. Camp is so bad, and you think, how could they live in a situation like this? It's terrible. This is awful. And it just, no matter whose side you take or who you hear it from, you're thinking, everybody else is terrible. They're just terrible people. And then you start digging deeper. You talk to another person. Maybe you start to say, well, I'm going to be a peacemaker in this situation. And you've been talking to Esau, and you go to Jacob, and you find out, like, Esau doesn't even care about the family at all. And he's just such a bad guy himself. And you just realize it's so interwoven. They're all at such fault. Everyone's so broken. The family's so messed up. You can't imagine the layers of deceit that have happened here. And the problems have gone on for so long, like they're never going to be fixed. It doesn't seem. None of these people are ever going to change. This is the way it feels. And this is the way it feels when you talk to people about their families and stuff and their life. It's like what's gone wrong in their life is so entrenched, like it's just never going to change. But it's glorious to think God had chosen Jacob for something here, and after all this had happened, he'd had 77 years of life where this was what he was like. Then he goes out and he spends 20 years working for somebody just like himself. And he learned a lot. And he knew enough about God to pray to God before he left that God would preserve him. And if God would do that and bring him back to this place, then he would serve God. And God did it. And he gets back there and says, all right, you're my God. And he's a changed man. It's glorious. This is the father of Israel. Of the nation of Israel. His name becomes Israel, Prince of God. this lying deceiver becomes a prince of God. And this is what was just wonderfully encouraging. It's like you read these guys, and many times people want to put them on a pedestal. I mean, if you read through this text and you just go on to the next chapters and you finish Genesis thinking, man, that man, Jacob, what a man of faith. He really wrestled with God. Remember when he did that? Like, okay, once, but what about his whole life before that? He's a scoundrel. You would want nothing to do with this man. And God saved him, made him a prince. In a real sense, a prince of God. It's a wonderful thought. It's wonderfully encouraging to realize that the patriarchs were this bad. Right? I mean, we're talking about, there's three of them, right? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're reading about Isaac and Jacob, and it's not too good. And there's plenty of stories about Abraham that weren't good. Now, we saw the growth and the progress and where he went. And I would say most of us would love to end up where Abraham ended up in terms of his faith and his believing God in the midst of all sorts of things. But these two guys, Isaac, I mean, we saw some repentance here in the middle of this story. That was good. We saw lots of faith before. This is kind of a low spot for him, this story. But with Jacob, this is just par for the course. This is what life has been like. You would not have picked him as a candidate for the Abrahamic blessing. You wouldn't have picked him as a candidate, to have the blessing of God, to have wrestled with God, to have found peace with God. You say, well, that's not that guy. But he was. This is what happened. I think of one text in the New Testament. We'll close with this. It's one of those texts that finds itself in several of the Gospels, but we'll look at Mark chapter 2 and verse 17. Let me back up to verse 13. I think this is really good to see the context here. He went out again, this is Jesus, went out again beside the sea, and all the crowd was coming to him, and he was teaching them. And as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as he reclined at table, so follow him where? He goes into a house. As he reclined at table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. Many tax collectors, many sinners reclining at table. And the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Right? You'd think, God, why would this holy man have anything to do with these sinners, right? These corrupt, wicked people. And we could say the same, we could back up and say the same thing about Jacob. Why would we wouldn't think God would have anything to do with him. He's done. If Esau demonstrates in this section how unfit he is to receive the promises, surely Jacob does. Surely Jacob does too. What do we read? And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." And that's a powerful point. You think, I'm here to help. And then what does he say? I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. He's like, this is the whole reason I'm even here, is for these people. Right? For the people that live that life, that's why I came. Don't think it's for the people that are cleaned up and like, you look at them and you say, well, they're not far from the kingdom. Those are the ones God came to save. That's not it. He came to save the tax collectors and the sinners. Right? Those without any hope. And that's all of us, really. Right? Without any hope apart from God. That's why he came. And so it's consistent all the way through the Scriptures. But you see it here in the stories of this family, just how bad it was. You think, well, I mean, you should be encouraged. Think, well, God can move in any circumstance, in any situation, however bad it is. You got bad family dynamics, right? Hey, things can be better. Things can be far better. God can save, right? This is a reality. So take encouragement in that. We sang a hymn today. The last one we sang, I believe. 314 in the Redemption. Whether we sing it again or not, that's not what I'm going to it for. But pass me not, O gentle Savior. And I wanted to read verses 3 and 4 because they really fit. You know, what's the lost world's response to God? Like, they're in this misery, they're in this situation, family life is this way, the relationships are this bad with everybody they know, they're running for their lives. Like, what do you do? Right? We can start in verse 1 as far as we take it that way. Pass me not, O gentle Savior, hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling, do not pass me by. Let me at thy throne of mercy find a sweet relief. Kneeling there in deep contrition, help my unbelief. Trusting only in thy merit, right? I'm not saying I'm better than this person, I'm better than that person. I'm not trying to distinguish myself and provide merit for your grace. I'm trusting only in your merit. And I'd seek your face. Heal my wounded, broken spirit. Save me by thy grace. Thou, the spring of all my comfort, more than life to me, whom have I on earth beside thee? Whom in heaven but thee? Who's going to fix this situation? Like, who's going to fix Jacob? Nobody. Whom have I in heaven but thee? Right? Like, nobody's going to bring him life and peace, consolation. Nobody's going to change him. Not really. Just God. God's able to do it. Well, that is all that I have today. Are there any questions or comments anybody has on this portion? The text itself is just kind of depressing, in terms of what happens. But again, we put it in its larger context and we can take encouragement from some of the things we see. Anyone at all?